I had scarcely set my walking stick in its rack and divested myself of a scarf dripping with London sleet when the Evening Post thudded upon the doormat of 221B Baker Street. The clock on the Mantelan upright French carriage model Holmes kept more for its mellow chime than its accuracy insisted. It was 3 minutes to 11. Yet when I bent to gather the scattered envelopes, I distinctly heard 11 hollow notes, not 12, peal from the bells of Marylebone Parish 2 streets distant. A curious misstroke, doubtless a loose hammer. Still it sent a perceptible tremor along my spine, as though the hour had paused in mid-stride to acknowledge some hidden watcher in the fog. I found Holmes seated cross-legged in the bow window, the glow of the street lamp limning his aquiline profile in sepia. A Bunsen flame hissed on the chemistry bench behind him, colouring the air with thin violet smoke. "News of moment, Watson?" he asked without turning. "Your tread betrays equal parts chill and excitement." "I believe moment is the word." I handed him a half-sheet torn from the Timazan Anonymous Correspondence Dispatch from Dorset. In terse columns it recounted the appearance, upon a deserted clifftop estate, of an ornate crimson mantel clock which tolled 11 strokes at midnight and thereafter vanished. Villagers spoke of a pale figure moving through rain with the clock cradled like an infant. A footman had disappeared. The local constable, investigating, was found wandering senseless at dawn, muttering of gears that bled. Holmes's grey eyes swept the report in a single glance, then moved to the bundle of unopened letters on his knee. He selected one heavy cream stock, seal impressed with the GR, cipher of His Majesty's government. The handwriting was Mycroft's. "Brother, evidence has surfaced that recent horological disturbances, see enclosed clippings, are not isolated. Their pattern intersects with families of interests you have previously served. Your dispatch to Dorset would be expedient." "Horological disturbances," Holmes echoed. "Our elder sibling is at his most economical. Very good." He rose, every sinew suddenly alert. "Pack a valise for 2 nights. We leave with the 6 a.m. down train." We travelled into a dawn of leaden cloud. Fields of winter stubble slid past, white with rime. Telegraph poles clicked like metronomes. Holmes unfurled a large-scale map, pencil dancing between tiny episcopal crosses that marked country churches. Beside each he inscribed the figure 11. "You observe, Watson, that since New Year nearly a dozen towers north to Yorkshire, south to Kentave, each sounded 11 strokes at some grotesquely chosen hour. Dorset is merely the late stand, the first, accompanied by abduction. And the common thread, not the mechanism. One bell is a 13th century Sanctus, another an 1815 Whitechapel recast. No, the thread is proximity to estates once aligned with the order of the broken dial." He tapped 4 points, forming a skewed compass rose: Pembroke of Dorset, Whitcomb of Wiltshire, Ashcroft on the Avon, and an obscurer name half erased by Age Redfern. I recalled whispers of that cabal, alchemists and clockrights who, during the Stuart troubles, had dreamt of transcending temporal law. Most scholars dismissed them. Holmes, it seemed, had not. A porter announced Milbourne Junction. Rain lashed the platform like thrown nails. We hired a dog-cart, its lantern slicing fog into tumbling curtains, and took the coast road toward Pembroke Manor. It proved a forbidding pile of Tudor grey rising from cliffs that moaned with surf. Lady Eleanor Pembroke awaited us in the vaulted vestibule, storm-pale, a crimson cloak clinging to her shoulders like the coil of some exotic serpent. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, me gratitude outruns protocol." Her voice was low yet steady. "Since the clock arrived 3 nights past, dread has nested in every corridor. Last evening our footman Michael went to secure the sea gate and did not return. She led us to the library. There upon a marble chimney-piece presided the crimson clock, lacquer the shade of arterial blood, gilt filigree entwined with cameo scenes of Kronos devouring his children. A single vellum tag dangled. Time bleeds for the sins of the upper class. Holmes's hands hovered but did not touch. I saw his nostrils flare mercury, perhaps, or ozone. He removed the back plate with a surgeon's delicacy. "Modified?" he murmured. The rack lifted so the snail drops at 11. Simple, but the chiming rod is silvered with, yes, quicksilver, enhances resonance, renders each note uncanny. Lady Pembroke shivered. That note seemed to travel beneath the skin. "Indeed," Holmes said. "An instrument designed less to mark time than to infect it." He replaced the plate. "May I examine the grounds?" Twilight found us striding through salt-bitten gardens. The lantern's beams snagged upon hedges, glittering with hoarfrost. Beyond a ruinous ha-ha, cliffs plunged to black water where spray leapt like ghostly semaphore. Suddenly a figure detached from the Usa, tall man cloaked in midnight blue. Holmes called out. The stranger bolted toward the orangerie. We gave chase, boots crunching gravel. He flung a glass sphere that burst in phosphorescent smoke, stinging eyes and throat. When the air cleared, only a scrap of blue wool remained on a broken branch. "Custom weave," Holmes observed, pocketing it. "London tailoring, not Dorset." A cry echoed from the house Lady Pembroke's maid. We raced back to find her pointing at the study door. On its oak panels someone had etched, in livid red, the numeral 11. Holmes inspected the marks. Paint but mixed with human blood. If I am not mistaken, the author means us to taste the hour. That night, Lady Pembroke insisted we lodge within the manor. Holmes and I established a rotating watch. At exactly 11:00, the crimson clock tolled soft, unspeakably resonant. On the second stroke, the great tower bell answered in identical pitch. On the 9th, a distant church across the bay took up the echo. 11 notes rolled through Dorset like a funeral drum tapped by invisible hands. When silence fell, a footstep sounded overhead. Holmes's signal was a curt nod. Revolver drawn, I followed him up the servants' stairs. At the far end of a shuttered corridor stood a narrow door we had not yet explored. The lock surrendered to Holmes's pick within seconds. A rush of damp air greeted us, the scent of mould and old salt. Lantern light revealed a hewn stone passage slanting downward, unmarked on any civil plan. On the threshold lay Michael the footman, bound but breathing, eyes wide with terror. He whispered one phrase before swooning. "The pendulum wakes." Holmes's gaze flicked past the unconscious youth into the tunnel's darkness. Somewhere deep below, a sound commenced. Not a drip, nor a rat's scurry, rather. The slow mechanical tick-tock of a massive escapement rousing after centuries of stillness. "Watson," he said softly, "we stand at the verge of a design older than this house, and perhaps older than England. Fetch smelling salts for the boy, then steel your nerves. Down there, the clockwork of some buried wrath is winding toward the 11th stroke." Michael's pulse fluttered beneath my fingers, but he revived quickly under the sting of salts. His first coherent words were a plea. "Keep her from the clock, Serge," said. "The stroke must bleed." Holmes pressed a flask of brandy to the lad's lips and bade him speak plainly. "Who is she?" "A lady. Black hair, foreign eyes. Came by Seagate. Said the house owed time for sins." Holmes exchanged a glance with me. "Arabella Redfern," he muttered. "The Order's prodigal scion." Then aloud, "Rest here, Michael. 2 footmen will guard you." He dispatched Mrs. Hargreaves for assistance, then beckoned me into the yawning stair. The mechanism's heartbeat below had strengthened tick, tock, tick, tock like an iron heart resuming life. The passage corkscrewed through shale, its walls wet with brine that licked our boots. After 30 yards, the ceiling vaulted into a cavern lit by guttering pitch torches. At its center hung a gigantic pendulum, a bronze rod thicker than a man's thigh, suspended from iron beams disappearing into darkness. Its boban octagonal mass, the weight of a carriage's, wept a shallow arc above a stone basin, half filled with viscous crimson. "The pendulum of Exodus," breathed Holmes. "Broken dial legend declared it would purge ancestral debts in blood." His lantern revealed runes along the rim. "Tempvis fervum est." Incfidi militia time is iron, an anvil for malice. Set into a dais, beyond the pit stood a control dais of gears and cam wheels evidently linked by shafts to the crimson clock upstairs. Upon it flickered a single green fuse, ready to ignite a magazine of quicksilver vials. Holmes examined it with surgical focus. A resonant detonation, he concluded. Time to the 11th stroke. Vaporized mercury will burst through flues beneath every chimney a death. Miasma for household and village alike. Ingenious and abhorrent. A ripple of applause drifted from the shadows. We spun, revolvers raised. From behind a buttress stepped Alfred Redfernthal, cloaked in the same midnight wool we had seized. At his side glimmered the pale-faced Arabella, eyes fevered with triumph. Between them they held Lady Eleanor, wrists bound in velvet ribbon. "A theatrical scene, Mr. Holmes," Alfred drawled. "Time, you see, belongs to the victors." Holmes regarded them coolly. "You propose to settle a Stuart-era ledger by murdering innocents." "Not murder, calibration," Arabella said. "When blood tolls 11, the stain of Pembroke treachery will wash away our family's exile." Her hand caressed a lever beside the fuse. "Another bell will answer from Whitcomb Hall tomorrow. Then Ashcroft until the compass forms, and the world recalls who forged its hours." Holmes's voice was raw silk. "Release Lady Pembroke, and we discuss restitution." Arabella's smile held Mercury's sheen. "Step back from the gear train, or her pulse aligns with the pendulum's first drop." I noted Holmes's left thumb sliding a notch upon his Webley silent code that spoke. "Third column, second girder chute when I shift." I nodded imperceptibly. Holmes lifted both palms. "Very well." He stepped aside but simultaneously kicked his lantern into the vat. Oil flared brilliant white. Flames leapt at the pendulum, casting wild shadows. Arabella shrieked, eyes dazzled. I fired 2 shots. The first shattered the lever's glass knob. The second snapped the fuse halfway along its wire. Alfred lunged, dragging Lady Eleanor toward an escape arch. Holmes vaulted the pit landing atop the Daishans, flying across cogs. With a squeal, the pendulum juddered and halted mid-swing. Alfred thrust Lady Eleanor aside and swept a rapier from his cane. Holmes parried with his own swordstick. Steel rang in the cavern's echoes. Sparks danced amid oily smoke. Arabella darted for the gear train, clutching a spare fuse. I intercepted her. She clawed with surprising strength, nails scoring my cheek. "Time will feast," she hissed. We grappled. I managed to wrench her wrist behind her back just as constables' whistles piped from the stair Mrs. Hargreaves had done her duty. Outnumbered, Alfred backed toward the cliff vent at the cavern's rear, blade trembling. Holmes's riposte tore his sleeve, crimson blossomed. At the same instant, the cliff wall boomed as if smote by a titan storm swell's battered hidden sea doors, sending cold spray through iron grates. Alfred faltered, slipped upon wet stone, and tumbled into the pendulum basin. A hiss rose as blood met mercury. The surface convulsed and stilled. Arabella's cry collapsed into sobs. "Time owes us." Holmes lowered his sword. "Time owes no man, Miss Redfern. We merely borrow its minutes." Constables led her away. Lady Eleanor, freed, embraced Michael now, brought down before turning to us with tears of gratitude. Holmes surveyed the smouldering mechanism. "Disable every shaft. Flood this tomb with concrete." He pocketed a brass cam. "Ruin likes to grow again." By morning, the Dorset Constabulary had sealed the estate. Holmes and I took a narrow-gauge train inland. He studied the captured cam under a pocket glass. "Note the stamp W. Clerkenwell Whitcomb. Webb, Premier Clockmakers, to Wiltshire Gentry. Our next destination is Whitcomb Hall." "But we stopped the pendulum," I said. "Only the Dorset arm. The compass has 4 points. We have crossed but 1. Whitcomb Hall rose amidst chalk down's Jacobean wings flanking a Norman keep. Its owner, Sir Percival Whitcomb, greeted us in a cluttered scriptorium. He had already heard rumours of Pembroke's ordeal via telegraph. Holmes produced the cam. Did any party commission such workmanship from your smiths? Sir Percival adjusted pince-nez, colour draining. My daughter Clara oversees the workshops. She reported theft of several strike wheels last month. I dismissed it as pilfering. Holmes requested access to the clock tower. Clara, scholarly, russet-haired, guided us up spiral steps dusted with guano. The turret clock's minute hand was missing. In its place, a crude wooden rod jammed the snail wheel, set to arrest at 11th. Holmes grimaced. They mean to toll the same dread tonight. Clara bit her lip. What do they want of us? Holmes eyed distant downs. To summon the second arm of a compass older than your family. They'll fail. We laid traps throughout the hall, pressure threads on corridors, constables disguised as footmen. Dusk settled, and with it a hush, expectant as theatre curtains. At 10:57, a discreet chime echoed softer than a mouse's scythe tripwire on the east garden. Holmes and I hastened by covered way. Moonlight glazed frost-coated hedges. Beyond an ancient sundial crouched Julian Whitcomb, Sir Percival's nephew, a gentle botany enthusiast we had earlier met in the hothouse. But now he wielded a crowbar against a service hatch leading under the bell frame. Holmes called, "Julian!" The young man started, eyes dilated. "I must," he gasped. "Arabella promised release time punishes debtors. Uncle knows." He swung the bar. Holmes caught his wrist. Julian struggled like a snared bird, tears streaking his cheeks. From his pocket spilled a phial of phosphorus, mixed the same reeking compound used at Pembroke. Constables seized him. Holmes knelt, voice gentle. "Who else, Julian?" A scholar of clocks met me at Oxford," he whispered. "Professor Thorne showed me diagrams. Said our families forged a covenant to enslave Britain's hours. If we reset clocks to confess the sin, the land heals. Where is Thorne?" "He sails tonight. Farringdon Street, Telegraph House. He commands the bell circuits from there." Julian broke into sobs. Holmes straightened, urgency blazing in his eyes. "Watson, England's clocks are but nodes. Thorne will play them like organ stops." A midnight express steamed toward London. Snow rattled against dark windows. Holmes's silhouette was a hawk at perch. "Telegraph House routes, electrical strikes to civic towers," he explained. "Thorne will channel his 11 through every refurbished bell. St. Paul's, Big Ben panic nationwide. We have 2 hours." We arrived at Farringdon under sleet thick as wool. Telegraph House loomed granite facade, arched windows, pulsing lamplight. Inspector Lestrade awaited with a squad, summoned by Holmes via prior wire. Inside, rows of brass relays clicked like insect hordes. A junior engineer pointed us underground. Channel C overloaded. Someone spliced an induction coil in the old pneumatic mail loop. Down brick tunnels we crept. Ahead glowed hellish red. A lattice of copper coils encircled a dynamo. At its core labored Professor Elias Thorne Zallow, raven-haired, once of Cambridge chronometry thought disgraced. Beside him a captive, Captain Lionel Ashbury, scion of the Order's final family line, bound to a detonator vest. Holmes stepped into the crimson glare. "Thorneath, 11th hour has passed." Thorne smiled, fingers poised on rheostat. "But the cycle begins anew. Britain fossilizes in tradition. I shall reforge its hours in terror, restart civilization at 0. He gestured to the coil. "When the pulse hits channel C, every bell you cherish will speak my gospel." Holmes advanced, arms placid. "Release Captain Ashbury. Engage minds, not explosives." Thorne snorted. "Your logic rusts, Holmes. Time's tyranny ends tonight." He fingered a mercury switch. I had edged behind a column. At Holmes's sudden feint I fired. Bullet shattered the rheostat knob. Sparks cascaded. Thorne cursed, lunged for manual lever. Holmes tackled him. They crashed into wires. Electricity arced blue but grounded harmlessly. Lestrade's men swarmed. Ashbury was freed. Holmes dragged Thorne upright. "Observe, Professor. Your coil receives no mains." I severed feed on arrival. Thorne's defiance crumbled. "Then the others will speak," he hissed. "Clock Hill, sanctum horologium, the pendulum will rise." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Clock Hill, that Roman ruin on Carrion Moor." Turning to me, "We depart at dawn. The compass's heart beats there." Morning saw Thorne delivered to Scotland Yard, Julian Whitcomb to care of his family. Lady Pembroke's clock lay dismantled. Whitcomb's tower rang true once more. Yet Holmes remained restless. In our train compartment, he unfolded the fractured ledger he had seized from Thorne's satchel, a palimpsest of lunar alignments, ley lines converging on Carrion Moor, Kent. The broken dial foretold meridiana conjunction of 4 silver keys. He produced 2, the blood-stained hand from Pembroke, the stolen minute wheel from Whitcomb. Redfern East and Whitcomb West are now ours. North belongs to Ashcroft, south to Ashbury. Thorne plotted to unite copies forged in nickel steel. We shall bury originals in lead. The train whistle shrieked. Beyond frosted glass stretched miles of snow-blank Heath, England, holding its breath. Holmes clasped the ledger shut. "We embark upon the final march, Watson. Tonight Carrion Moor will either echo legitimate midnight or drown in an 11th stroke that never ends." I felt the weight of my revolver as reassurance, yet also the weight of time itself, coiling like a wounded serpent, ready to strike once more. Steam hissed from the brake pipes as our train shuddered to a halt at Ashcroft-on-Avon Halt, a solitary platform crusted with hoarfrost and ivy. The downline signalong disused creaked like a crow alighting. Holmes descended first, cloak snapping in the wind. Sir Percival's telegram had preceded us, granting access to the Ashcroft archives, yet I sensed my companion trusted telegrams little and shadows less. A landau awaited, driven by Lord Edmund Ashcroft's groom. The horse snorted clouds into the brittle dawn as we rattled north along flint walls and leafless elms. To the west, the river glimmered pewter. To the east, rag and bone clouds huddled over Clock Hill, our ultimate destination. Lord Ashcroft received us in a vaulted muniment room that smelled of vellum and iron gall. His gaunt frame radiated suppressed agitation. In one spotted hand he clutched a cedar cassette secured by 3 different locks. "I feared your wire, Mr. Holmes," he began without preamble. "At first light we discovered the vestry door splintered. The north key is gone." Holmes's jaw tightened as he accepted the box. 2 locks were sheared. The third remained intact. "A thief worked swiftly and with knowledge," he said, "and likely still lingers within 50 miles. Describe the key for Mevan minutiae." Lord Ashcroft produced a sketch. A silver hour, hand 14 inches long, spine inlaid with obsidian chips. Roman numeral, I engraved at base north point of the Covenant compass. It matched the pattern of the Redfern Whitcomb pieces now wrapped in oiled silk inside Holmes's carpet bag. "Any strangers near the estate?" I asked. "Only a tall parson collecting for orphan relief," Lord Ashcroft recalled. "And a peddler of phosphorus matches," Holmes murmured. "Parson cloak sufficient to conceal a rapier, matches to mask the stench of chemicals. Our wandering professor in yet another costume." He struck the desk. "We leave at once. The south key remains with Viscount Ashbury if Thorne's disciples hold north. They will strike Devon tonight." Lord Ashcroft paled. "My yacht is at your disposal on the X." "First we need telegraph lines," Holmes replied. "Warn Ashbury. Meanwhile I shall hunt the parson." By mid-afternoon we had traced footprints along the dew-soaked south lawn-sharp heels with diamond cleats, boots of continental make. They vanished at the outer ha-ha where bicycle tracks emerged, heading toward the canal path. Holmes knelt, extracted a smear from the tire rut, blue grease laced with graphite. "I know the blend German. Sold exclusively in Clerkenwell," he said. "Professor Thorne rides a Humber safety bicycle. We may still overtake him." Yet 2 hours of pursuit along muddy towpaths yielded no rider only, a scuttled bicycle half submerged near a lock gate. Lashings of blue grease adorned its chain, but the saddlebag hung empty. Holmes retrieved a torn scrap of parchment wedged beneath the frame. Meridian 4th January, 0:11, Carrion. In the margin a sigil of serpents devouring an hour. Glass. Holmes folded the scrap reverently. At 11 minutes past midnight tomorrow, Carrion Moor hosts its apotheosis. Keys or no keys? We hurried back to Ashcroft for our valises. Lestrade, upon receiving Holmes's urgent wire, promised to marshal a detachment at Barnstaple by nightfall. Still, reaching Ashbury in time felt as frail as frost lace. Cold sleet lashed the windows of the 5 p.m. express to Exeter. Across from us sat Captain Lionel Ashbury, still recovering from Thorn's detonator vest, his knuckles whitened round a valise. "The South Key is inside," he whispered. "My father had the silver realloyed last spring cast into a chronometer wheel for our lighthouse at Hurst Point. I removed it after Thorn's abduction for safekeeping." Holmes nodded. "Wise. Yet thieves require only a facsimile now. Their stage is Carrion. The original engine waits. Legend says its pendulum needs true silver." Ashbury countered. Holmes allowed a thin smile. "Legend errs often. They may rely on resonance rather than purity. We must assume the engine will function." We changed trains at Exeter, boarded a night local to Sidmouth, then commandeered horses for the cliff-top road. Thunderheads lumbered overhead, distant flashes limned the English Channel in magnesium light. At Elderscourt, Ashbury's ancestral pile, the forecourt blazed with lanterns and nervous footmen. Inside, Viscount Ashbury paced beneath portraits of sea captains and astronomers. Holmes pulled him aside. "Someone may already walk your halls bearing a substitute South Key. Order all servants to the drawing room. Let us examine pockets." An uneasy assembly followed, but while Holmes sifted waistcoat linings, a boom shook the east wing, followed by shouts. We rushed to a conservatory now shattered by an iron ball that bore through glass and landed smouldering amid orchids. Affixed was a parchment. "Pendulum swings 11 bleeds, next surrender the wheel." Holmes stooped over the projectile. "Signal mortar from the cove. They know the key is here. Time to misdirect them." He instructed Captain Ashbury to remove the true wheel and hide it inside the weight case of the Manor long case clock. "Spread word the key departs for London by mail coach at once," Holmes whispered. "Let them give chase." Under starlight, Holmes and I rode hard to the cove. Within the ruined coast battery we discovered spent mortar tubes, still warm. Tide hissed below limestone arches. The sand bore boot prints leading to a pinnace stowed beneath tarpaulin oars shipped, compass aligned for open sea. Holmes scanned the horizon where a feeble lantern bobbed, a larger vessel waiting offshore. He tossed his cloak into the pinnace and hoisted sail enough to let it drift out on ebbing tide. I stared. "You intend them to believe we carry the key?" He grinned. "Thorn expects pursuit. Let us provide bait." We returned inland by a goat path. Behind us, the pinnace's lantern dwindled toward the waiting ship. Dawn. 4 January. Lestrade rendezvoused with 2 carts of constables at Dartmoor's Carrion Gate, an ancient toll arch long abandoned. The moor stretched, a wasteland of peat pools and granite tors glowing dull gold under rising sun. Wisps of mist clung like wraiths. In its heart, a crag known to locals as Clock Hill, rose-crowned by tilted Roman stones. Holmes distributed potassium flares and signaled silence. The sanctuary lies beneath. 4 shafts converge on a nave. Pendulum apex sits 30 feet below summit. Fuse channels run through ventilation chimneys. Destroy the gearing and the pendulum remains inert. Lestrade's men ringed the hill. Holmes, Ashbury, and I entered through a fissure, half hidden by gorse. Ancient steps spiraled, mortared with black glass that shimmered under lantern light. Lower we went until a corridor opened into a basilica, like the bowels of a sunken cathedral. Columns of basalt, floor inlaid with silver lines forming a compass rose. At each cardinal spoke stood a dais waiting a key. West and east dais already glimmered Whitcomb hour wheel, and red fern minute rack secured beneath crystal domes. Upon the north plinth lay the stolen Ashcroft hand. South remained vacant. At the centre loomed the pendulum of Exodus. twin booms suspended from a trihedral yoke, massive bob scraped with verdigris. Beneath yawned a bronze cauldron connected via pipes to stone ducts. Professor Thorne, cloaked, balanced atop an inspection gantry, holding a replacement south wheel of nickel steel. Beside him, Julian Whitcomb, now in chains, apparently demoted to hostage, while Arabella Redfern, hands unbound, chanted under breath, voice echoing metallic. Holmes whispered, "They forged a copy south key but still need true. Lunar phase harmonics commence at 0:11 tonight. We can end this before sunset." We stepped forward. Thorne ceased his adjustments. Holmes, ever meddling. His eyes glittered fever, bright. "Observe key's turn. Empire burns. After tonight, clocks will denote a new epoch. Year 0. Holmes raised empty hands. "Your nickel wheel will fracture at resonance. Only true silver withstands." "Then I shall acquire it," Thorne sneered. "My launch approaches with Ashbury's wheel." He pointed to a speaking tube. Distant foghorns answered. From the shadows slid Captain Lionel Ashbury, revolver leveled. "Launch is empty. We scuttled it at anchor." He tossed a pouch containing shards of silver and wood. "False cargo." Thorne's face contorted, but Arabella pressed the lever regardless. Ratchets clacked, the pendulum shuddered, then began its ominous swing. Steam hissed, ducts vibrated. Holmes shouted to me, "The bearing braces shoot the collar." I aimed at a quartile joint above the bob, shot pinged off iron. Lestrade's men now flooded the corridor behind us. Thorne yanked a chain. Iron shutters slammed across entrances, locking us with the engine. Arabella drew a stiletto, lunged for Holmes. He parried with his cane, disarming her, but she darted to a valve wheel and spun it full. Yellow gas seeped. Holmes grabbed my arm. Into the service gallery, ventilation leads upward. We scrambled onto catwalks. Below, Thorne fought Ashbury, pistol against sword. Julian Whitcomb, still chained, shouted warnings. Gas thickened, a miasma of chlorine-mercury mix. I tasted metal on my tongue. Holmes located a copper conduit above us. "If we rupture feed, steam pressure will seize the pendulum, bearings freeze the mechanism." He produced his penknife, jammed blade into rivet seam. A geyser of superheated steam blasted. Iron shrieked. The pendulum jerked mid-arc, overshot, slammed into a stanchion. Bolts sheared. The bob crashed through the cauldron, sending shards across the nave. Gas flames whooshed skyward. Arabella screamed. Thorne reeled as shrapnel tore his coat. He fled toward a stair, but Ashbury tackled him. Constables now inside wrestled both to surrender. The sanctuary convulsed. Ceiling stones trembled. Holmes seized Arabella's arm, hauling her to safety. We herded prisoners and hostages through North Tunnel as debris rained. Behind us, the pendulum lay twisted, sparks guttering in its gut. Silver lines melted. Keys of east and west sank in molten bronze, lost forever. Outside, Carrion Moor breathed morning light. Smoke belched from fissures as the hill collapsed inward, entombing the engine. Lestrade ordered cordon and eventual infilling with concrete. Arabella Redfern, bound yet strangely serene, gazed upon the ruin. "History is patient," she murmured. "It will wind again." Holmes replied, "And reason will be here to unwind it." Each time. That evening, in a parlour at Exeter's Royal Clarence Hotel, key figures gathered. Lady Pembroke, Sir Percival Whitcomb, Lord Ashcroft, Viscount Ashbury, Inspector Lestrade. Holmes presided, pipe unlit. "We dissolve the Order of the Broken Dial this day," he declared. "Its relics destroyed, its heirs resolved to transparency." He produced the ledgers, the surviving North Key, and ashes of the East-West copies. "These will go to the Tower Armoury, under Crown Seal never again to tick." Sir Percival bowed. "We relinquish past debts, Mr. Holmes. Whatever our ancestors committed, our children shall not inherit." Holmes's expression softened. "Time moves forward, gentlemen. Let us move with it." Later, alone on the starlit platform awaiting midnight train to Paddington. Holmes spoke quietly. "Watson, do you hear it?" I cocked an ear. Only distant owls and wind. "Precisely," he said. "For once England's clocks agree. Midnight strikes at 12. No more, no less." He clasped my shoulder. "Yet remember the 11th hour ever approaches. We must stay attuned." The train whistle pierced the night. As we boarded, I glanced toward constellations framed in wrought iron canopy. The hour, like the sky, felt newly scrub-still fragile, but ours for now. And so the pendulum of Exodus fell silent, but the vigilance of its vanquishers must never do so. London greeted us with a clammy drizzle that blurred the gas lamps and drummed a somnolent tattoo on the roof of the hansom. Holmes leaned forward, eyes half shut, yet I knew the apparent lassitude masked a brain still sparking like a switchboard at peak load. In my valise clinked the last fragments of the broken dial tokens of victory, perhaps, but also reminders of just how delicate that triumph had been. "Lestrade will lodge Arabella in Holloway by noon," I ventured, wiping my moustache. "And Thorne?" "Pentonville pending trial under the Treason Felonies Act," Holmes answered. "Her Majesty's prosecutors will indulge him with every comfort save liberty." A soft, sardonic pause. "But prisons are soft clay to a mind such as his. We have set the dial back to noon, Watson, yet the minute hand always advances." For 8 days Holmes forbade me mention of the affair, immersing himself instead in the composition of a monograph entitled "Upon the Acoustic Properties of Aged Silver," with reference to horological resonance. I knew the tactic. The tangible grind of scientific prose dulled the aftertaste of peril far better than brandy or laudanum. Nevertheless, crumbs of anxiety remained chief among them, the whereabouts of the Brotherhood's surviving adepts. Lestrade's docket held only a dozen, yet our encounters below Carrion Hill and beneath Ashcroft Wing had suggested numbers at least double that, not counting foreign sympathizers. I worried. Holmes dissected footnotes. Until, on the night of 12th night, Mrs. Hudson announced a caller. Reverend Dr. Rupert Lang, Canon of St. Paul's, cheeks flushed above clerical collar. He bowed. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, forgive the hour. Something unusual has occurred in the cathedral clockrooms. I recalled your recent services." Holmes's eyes kindled. "Unusual?" "An intrusion," Lang confessed. 3 nights in succession, the quarter chime has delayed by precisely 66 seconds, yet the mechanism remains immaculate. Tonight the vergers found this. He produced a velvet pouch. Inside lay a dime-sized disc of hammered nickel, engraved with concentric eights. The Ouroboros ad infinitum. Holmes flicked it into the air, caught it. "A calling card." He turned to me. "Take your revolver, Watson. Our adversaries wish to remind us the game yet spins." St. Paul's, midnight. Wind funneled along Ludgate Hill, rattling awning chains. The dome loomed like a whale's skull against ragged cloud. Lang led us past the dozing watchman and up corkscrew stairs that tasted of iron rust and birdlime. In the lantern room, the great clock's twin trains clicked with placid majesty. Nothing appeared disturbed save a faint odour, sharp as cracked flint. Holmes knelt, loop in hand. On the escape wheel arbor shimmered a film of mercury amalgam no wider than a hair. He scraped it onto a glass slide. "Applied in the last 24 hours, he said. "Enough to skew friction, delay the palate, yet sublime once heated by lamp, flame and leave no trace." "Symbolic sabotage?" I asked. "An overture," he replied. "A new conductor tests his baton." We descended. In the nave's hush, Holmes paced the marble like a fencer measuring distance. The north key smashed, east and west melted. South absent from the engine yet, their doctrine survives. Lang whispered, "Must we fear another pendulum?" "Not here," Holmes said, gaze drifting toward the whispering gallery. "But perhaps elsewhere in a place not yet mapped by Ordnance Survey." 2 mornings later, a cylinder arrived by Royal Mail, no address, only, for the keeper of time. Inside, a photographic plate, and a single sentence in copperplate. When the meridian is but memory, the 11th hour shall know no prime. We developed the plate in Holmes's dark room. It showed a blurred yet unmistakable landmark, Great Zimbabwe, southern Rhodesian elliptical wall drenched in noon, bright sun. In the foreground, a leather-gloved hand held aloft what looked disturbingly like the true south wheel, the real Ashbury silver, not the nickel counterfeit lost at Carrion. Captain Ashbury had sworn the wheel lay still inside Elderscourt clock. A frantic telegram elicited a reply. Clock ransacked night of 9, Jan, valet drugged, wheel missing, L.A. Holmes straightened, complexion granite. The keys converge anew, miles from Westminster's reach. He moved to the map case, unfurling a linen chart of Africa. Great Zimbabwe sits near 15 degrees south. Note its moniker among Shona elders. Mukombe, Chingothe House of Stones. An apt sanctuary for an heir of the broken dial. I followed his logic. A hidden pendulum beneath the ruins. Or perhaps something older than pendulum. Recall Castro's hints. A polypus white thing worshipped in hidden lakes. The Brotherhood may seek to raise not a clock but a deity. My skin chilled. You intend to pursue them? Holmes's smile was almost wistful. The Empire maintains steamers from Southampton to Cape Town, then Rhodesian Rail, 17 daysif tickets acquired by this evening. Then there is not a moment to lose, I said, and surprised myself by the steadiness of my voice. Thus began the Rhodesian interlude, a blur of coal smoke and red latte sunsets across the Karoo. Holmes spent the voyage mastering Shona numerals, perusing monographs on Bantu astronomy, and drafting letters of introduction to colonial surveyors. I, for my part, prepared medical supplies against malaria and tried not to dream of pendulums. At Bulawayo we boarded the narrow gauge to Fort Victoria, dust pluming behind like cannon smoke. From there a hired Cape cart conveyed us toward the granite hills where the stone city slept. Our driver, a Matabele named Sifo, narrated legends in low tones, drums in the gorge at new moon, white-robed pilgrims carrying strange clocks, cattle found bled but not butchered. On the third evening, moon a sickle over mopane trees, we made camp near a serpentine wall of cyclopean blocks. Fireflies winked like watch hands. Holmes wandered with a bullseye lantern, studying mason marks older than Rome. He traced a spiral glyph identical to carvings on the pendulum dais. They have lain dormant 30 centuries, he said, waiting for Thorne's heirs to decipher them. We slept little. At dawn, Sifo woke us. Dust, clouds on the eastern track riders. Through my field glass I counted 7 figures, 3 wearing pith helmets, 4 in Kaffir cloaks. The leading rider brandished a Martini Henry carbine. Holmes drew me behind a coppier. Julian Whitcomb, riding to absolution or perdition, he murmured. Indeed, the slender form astride a chestnut stallion bore the botany satchel I knew too well. Behind him swayed a cedar crater dimensions suspiciously akin to the missing Ashbury wheel. I whispered, "We can intercept once they pass the Narrows." Holmes shook his head. "No, Watson. We follow. Let them open the sanctuary for us." A sun-blistered chase ensued along game paths until mid-afternoon, when the riders dismounted at the foot of the great enclosure's western bastion. There, beneath a lintel carving of interlocked serpents, gaped a fissure half-masked by lianas. Whitcomb produced an iron key, Ashcroft's, and they slipped inside. Holmes and I waited until silence returned, save for cicadas. Then, pistols cocked, we crept into the chill of passages smelling of bat guano and thyme. The interior vaulted unexpectedly, cavern merging into worked corbel vaults. Torchlight flickered ahead. We hid behind a fallen staler as Julian's party arranged their cargo beside a stone shaft capped by bronze capstan. Atop the capstan, seating grooves awaited 4 pie-shaped wedges. West and east wedges of crimson lacquer and tarnished gold. North a broken shove piece of silver. South the stolen wheel, gleaming. Professor Thorne, gaunt but alive, supervised, ribcage rising beneath khaki as he barked orders. Arabella Redfern, in linen and boots, tossed sal ammoniac into braziers, generating acrid clouds. A native acolyte beat a hide drum, cadence, 11-11, pause. Echoes gripped my spine. Holmes breathed. Not pendulum capstan. They intend to rotate the shaft, open something beneath. As south wheel clicked home, a tremor shook the floor. Vapor vented from seams. Thorn stretched arms skyward, chanting in a bastardized tongue. 11 in flesh, 12 in void. Meridian sundered, stone destroyed. Whitcomb wavered. I saw doubt cloud his face. Holmes stepped out, revolver raised. Enough, gentlemen. Withdraw the wheel, or bury yourselves. Pandemonium. Arabella snatched a Mauser, fired. Bullet shrieked past my ear. Holmes shot the drum. Its silence stunned the chamber just long enough for Whitcomb to wrestle the Mauser aside. The capstan stuttered. Steam howled from fissures. Suddenly the shaft sank, grinding downward like a screw. Air rushed, drawing torches horizontal. From depths rose a stench of salt marsh and corrupted lilies, and then from below breathing. Wet, colossal, ancient. Thorn laughed hysterically. Hear it, Holmes. The sleeper of Mukombe wakes. Arabella lunged toward the shaft, intent on opening further. Julian restrained her. No more. We are but scholars, this is abyss. She spat, clawing at his face. Holmes leapt, cuffed her with his cane. She crumpled. I dragged Thorn backward as suction increased the open throat of the earth, inhaling. Disable the capstan, Holmes shouted. I fired 3 rounds into the south wheel. Silver splintered. A bolt met the steel and sheared. With a thunderous clang, the entire assembly jammed. The shaft halted mid-descent. The breathing became a bellow. Then, silence. Grit fell like rain. A crack zigzagged across the ceiling. Holmes hollered, Cave in. Out. We fled. In the passage behind, Thorn rested free, but Julian tackled him. Arabella, regaining senses, scrambled for the shaft, but a boulder crashed, sealing her with the thing below. Her scream was swallowed by dust. Outside, under blinding sunlight, the ground lurched. A plume of ochre dust spouted from the enclosure, as if the city itself exhaled. Holmes supported Whitcomb bloodied, weeping. Thorn lay in irons soon after. He stared at the earth's stilling convulsions and muttered, Cycles, cycles resume. The colonial magistrate at Fort Victoria convened a hearing. Thorn faced charges of murder, tomb violation, conspiracy. Julian Whitcomb testified, voice raw but firm, that he had been coerced by threats to his sister, released only after professing repentance. Arabella's body remained entombed beneath Zimbabwe. No expedition dared retrieve it after seismographs recorded recurring tremors at 11-minute intervals. The Ashbury wheel, now cracked, was shipped back to England inside a lead casket. Viscount Ashbury decreed it recast into communion chalices, distributed among seaside charities. Time's weapon hammered into service. On the return voyage, Holmes stood at the rail, cigarette ember glowing. What slept below Mukombe, Watson, was never meant for clocks or pendulums. That engine served as cork more than weapon. Thorn nearly uncorked it. I shuddered at memory of the breathing void. Did we seal it forever? He exhaled smoke. Forever is the vocabulary of theologians, not detectives. But we bought perhaps another century. His gaze traced Orion rising over black water. Guardians come and go. What matters is that each generation leave the dial correct for the next. Back at Baker Street, spring was hesitantly greening plane trees. One mild April evening, a parcel arrived, no return address. Inside, a simple pocket watch of brass. Hands arrested at 12. On the dial, an inscription. Time redeemed by those who dare. A.W. Julian Whitcomb had vanished after the trial, rumored to be lecturing in Buenos Aires on tropical botany. I smiled and wound the watch. It ticked. Holmes placed it on the mantel beside his Stradivarius. A fitting relic, motionless, yet full of potential, like history itself. He reached for bow and drew a soft G. The note lingered, perfectly in tune. Outside, Big Ben chimed 9 exact, unmarred. In that resonance I heard not finality but vigilance awareness that minutes accumulate, gears wear, and pendulums drift, unless tended by steady minds and stout hearts. And so long as such keepers stand watch, even the darkest conspiracies of time may be set right again. Holmes lowered the violin, eyes alight. Come, Watson. The hour is young, the city restless, and I believe Mrs. Hudson has prepared kedgeree. I laughed light, unburdened, and followed him into the lamplit hallway, confident that for all the broken dial's cracked residues, England's chronicle moved forward in honest time.